For this project, we're going to be making a skeleton blueprint, but we're going to be doing it with some air dry clay using one of these Dollar Tree little skeleton coffins as a stamp, and then just one of their wood plaques. So the first thing I'm going to do is just get a large ball of my Sculpey air dry clay, and you'll just want enough to cover whatever you're using for the background, but I'm going to roll that air dry clay out so that it covers the entire front side of that wood plaque. I'm going to use the lip of the wood plaque and kind of rub the clay down over that lip and then cut off all of the excess clay. Then I'm just going to take my finger and rub around all the edges, get off any little pieces of clay that are still hanging, and smooth that down so it makes it look like one piece. Then, like I said, I'm going to use that little skeleton coffin from Dollar Tree. Just using the lid, I'm going to turn that over and press the skeleton down into the clay to make a skeleton impression. Be sure you are putting pressure everywhere on it, and then you just wiggle it a little bit to get it to come out of the clay. Now, I do want to turn this into a little blueprint plaque, so I'm actually just using a tiny little piece of a skewer from Dollar Tree and making those little lines that go beside of it so that I can label the body parts. And again, all I'm doing is just pressing that little piece down into the clay. Then to label my body parts, I started out using just the number stamps that I have right here. These are from Amazon, little wood stamps. But then I decided to add a few more, and I labeled those with the alphabet stamps. I also stamped a skeleton up in the top area, and this is what it ended up looking like. Then I set this aside to let the air dry clay dry overnight. I ended up painting it with 2 coats of some black chalk paint, and once that was dry, then I went over this with some European gold rub and buff and a big fluffy brush. For this project, we're going to make a skull candelabra. This is a candelabra that I got from the thrift store. It is not brass. It is just a really thin metal. So I am going to be painting over that, but I'm also going to be using these Dollar Tree skulls. Now, most candelabras, you can just unscrew the candle cups and they come right off. This one is no different. So I'm just going to unscrew those, and then I need to make holes all the way through my skulls, the bottom and the top. However you end up doing this, just be very, very careful not to cut yourself. But these Dollar Tree skulls are a very thin plastic. I don't have to press my scissors very hard to make the holes in these. And once I have the holes made, then I kind of just twist my scissors to make the hole a little bigger so that it will fit over the candelabra. And once I have all the holes done for the bottom of the skulls, I just flip those over and made a hole through the top so that I can slide this all the way down, and I'm able to screw the candle cups back into place. And I found that it's a lot easier to push that candle cup through the top of the skull before you set the skull down on the candelabra. It just makes it a lot easier to get it into the screw hole. So once I had all 3 of them done, then I'm going to take this outside and give it 2 coats of some black Rust-Oleum spray paint. And once it was dry, then I brought it right back in, and I'm going to go over this with some European gold rub and buff and a big fluffy brush. For this project, I wanted to make a poison tea set for Halloween. So I've actually had this pumpkin teapot for a few years now, so I'm going to use that. And then I just picked up 2 teacups from the thrift store. The first thing I wanted to do was make my tea set match, so I am going to take this outside and use some satin Rust-Oleum spray paint to paint all of these pieces black. And honestly, they look great just painted black, but I am going to add my little poison sayings to the front of my teapot and my teacups. I did use my Cricut to just cut out the words, "You've been poisoned," and then arsenic and cyanide to put onto the teacups. If you don't have a Cricut, you can use letter stickers or rub-on transfers. You could even paint it on, write it on yourself if you wanted to, or you could use different rub-on transfers or different stickers, whatever you want to do. It doesn't have to be exactly like this. When I added my vinyl to my teacups, I made sure that one of them was a little higher up because I do want to stack these. So if you want to stack yours, just keep that in mind. And these are going to go in my kitchen on one of my shelves. So I am using a little piece of floral foam from Dollar Tree in the bottom cup and surrounding it with floral moss to cover that foam before stacking these. And to finish it off, I wanted to add a little tea tag to the teapot. So I had these little stickers from Dollar Tree and I just folded it up to make it look like a tea tag. And I just used some of my Halloween stamps to make this tag. I actually changed my mind about this tag a couple times. So you'll see the final one. This one right here looks a little different than that one I just did. But I just punched a hole through the top of that tag and then added some Dollar Tree yarn to the tag and placed it inside of my teapot. Last year I made this really cute little witch from a figurine that I found at the thrift store. So this year I thought she could use a little friend, but we are going to do this with a twist. Instead of making another witch, we are going to turn her into a jack-o'-lantern lady. The first thing I did for this project was grab some of my air dry clay, and now you're going to want to get a clump that is the size of your figurine's head. As you'll see in just a little bit, mine's a little small, but I fixed it, don't worry. So just take that clay and make it into a ball shape. Now I am making my stem. You don't want to do that just yet, and I didn't figure that out until right here when I was like, oh, I have to cut this in half. So you're going to cut these pieces in half, and then each piece you're going to take your thumb and press the clay down, and this is so she'll have a spot for her hair and her face to go. So be sure to do this on both pieces, just pressing that clay down in there. Then you're going to start fitting it over the figurine's head. I started with the back side, and this is where I figured out that my piece was probably a little bit too small, so I am going to add a little bit of clay to this. But before I do that, I am just pressing this down as best I can, spreading the clay as far as it will go around her head. Then I'm just going to add a little pieces of clay wherever there's a gap, and I'm just smoothing that out with my fingers right now. In a little bit, we will be able to really get that clay pushed together. For now, the main thing you want to do is just make sure you get her entire head covered and you keep the shape of the pumpkin. Once I was happy with it, then I pinched up the clay to make a little stem for the top of the pumpkin. And this is what she was looking like at the moment. But then I'm going to take just a tiny bit of water on my finger and smooth out all of that clay. And everywhere where I put pieces, this is just going to blend that clay really nicely. Also, while I was working on her, she did have a broken pinky. So I took a tiny piece of clay and some wood glue and I made her a new finger. Before setting this aside to let that air dry clay dry, I really want to shape this pumpkin. So I'm just using this little scoring tool from Dollar Tree and making the lines of the pumpkin. And then I'm going to go back in with a skewer stick. You can use a string or whatever you have on hand, but everywhere where I made those lines, I'm just going to press it in to make the indentions of the lines on the pumpkin. Then I'll go back in with that scoring tool and I am just very lightly doing tiny little lines all over the stem to give it some texture. And then again, very lightly just taking it and making texture all over the pumpkin. I let this dry overnight and then I mixed up a little bit of some red and yellow paint. I really wanted to make this really dark burnt orange color for the pumpkin. So I ended up mixing some barn red acrylic paint with yellow, and I'm going to go over this pumpkin with 2 coats of this orange color. And while that's drying, I decided to paint her dress with a little bit of some black chalk paint. Again, I had to do 2 coats of this, and while I did try not to get it on her skin, it really didn't matter in the end because I had to fix her finger, so I did end up having to paint her skin as well. And once I was finished with her dress, then I went back to the pumpkin, painted the stem brown, and I also kind of dry brushed a little brown over the pumpkin as well. You can kind of see here, there's a little bit of brown down in those indentions that I made. And I just used a small brush and some creamy tan with pink for her skin. Once she was completely dry, I took her outside and sprayed her with 2 coats of Aleene's acrylic sealer. Then to finish it off, I just needed to make the jack-o'-lantern face. I did use a pencil to draw this on just to make sure where I wanted it before I actually committed to painting the face on. For the face, I just used some black acrylic paint and a really small paintbrush.